Fly into the danger zone. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a Degenerate Friday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you with us on what figures to be, as my good friend Al Bernstein always used to say, even when you had two guys making their pro debut in one of the prelims way back in the day when ESPN was filling most of its programming with Bobby Ches fights from the Totowa roller skating rink somewhere in New Jersey. Two guys that you had no idea who the hell they were and may never hear from again would step into the ring. And my buddy Al would say, this is a very intriguing matchup. We have an intriguing weekend of sporting activity. Of course, lots of college basketball action, NBA still going, and some interesting patterns developing there. And the conference championship games in the National Football League, climactic week, penultimate week in terms of crowning a champion after a long 2024 and now 2025 campaign. And the adage was always, hey, I'm perplexed as to which way to go in the two games. I mean, my rooting interest is into two teams that'll probably go down. I'd love to see the Commanders complete this Cinderella story and have Jaden Daniels make his way, first rookie to make his way. They're 0-5 in these spots if you're a trend player, rookies in conference championship games. And he would be the first rookie ever to take a team to a Super Bowl. Jaden Daniels has a possibility of doing that. Commanders, 6-point underdogs to the Philadelphia Eagles, who have an outstanding defense. Jalen Hurts may not be the same player, but Saquon Barkley figures to carry the torch for him. And the likelihood of Philadelphia prevailing there seems to be strong, but nonetheless, I'm thinking I'm going to take the 6 points with the Commanders in this game and give them a shot, maybe, and a rooting interest for me to see them actually win. And then the Buffalo game against the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of people are just sick of the Chiefs. They're looking for change. And even though as a South Floridian, the Buffalo Bills were always a despised team, and we reveled in Marv Levy's failures in 4 straight Super Bowl attempts. But I sort of have a rooting interest in them just to see a changing of the guard in the AFC and Kansas City finally getting its just due. We are investigating the story about Tim Donaghy possibly being the officiating chief for that game, the head of the crew. But that is yet to be validated or verified. Schefter's on it, all of the NFL insiders, Rappaport, they're scurrying around trying to find out if there is any semblance, any remote semblance of truth to the idea that the fix will be in with the officials in the Kansas City Buffalo game. But that being said, I mean, the adage always was, and the temptation, since I'm going into both of these games with a great deal of uncertainty, and that's not a popular position for anybody that's doing any sort of public handicapping show to profess. And the lines are tough in both of those games. Kansas City certainly deserving of being a narrow favorite at home over the Buffalo Bills. Philadelphia, you would think with that solid defense might be able to decode under Vic Fangio the Jaden Daniels ride that he's been on. And yet my temptation would be to bet both of those games, and we've had a couple of guys suggest this, or at least imply that their instinct would be to go with a 7-point teaser in both those games. So now you would be getting 13 with the Commanders, and or if you went the other way, you'd be getting 1 point with the Philadelphia Eagles. All they'd have to do is win the game, you win. And Buffalo, you could tease up to 8 and a hook or 9, depending on where this line ends up. And Kansas City, you'd be getting points if you went with a 7-point teaser. But along those lines, I mean, is the adage not lined with an element of truth? That they used to send a taxi cab for a guy at a casinos in Las Vegas for somebody who was going to come down and plunge and put big money on either the side or the over-under. But they would send a limousine for anybody, anywhere in the country that was willing to bet teasers. So we'll see if that logic prevails. But with a very tepid view of both of those games, I don't know how. Is there anybody out there that's screaming? I talk to many people, and they say Kansas City can't lose. So that leads me towards a lean to think that maybe I'm alive. A little bit of a shot with Buffalo, just getting the 1.5 or 2, and certainly if they're getting 8.5 or 9. I would think that they were very much alive. If you are betting the games, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for all of your betting, and just an unbelievable platform of online betting. They give you everything, and now, as we've said all week long, we've kind of been experiencing a little bit of an epiphany, going away from traditions and the geezers and Caesars approach, and maybe thinking in-game betting is the only way to go. But let's see a little bit first, right? I mean, if you could see the start, especially if you were betting dog racing back in the day, if you could see the start That would be an immense and huge guide in helping you figure out what was gonna go on the rest of the way. Not only true with NBA games, uh, I'm thinking maybe watching a little of the action doesn't hurt any. Laughing, Professor. We welcome the Professor in the
Did
show.
you
How are you,
just
Professor?
invent in-game betting for dog racing?
Dog racing, yeah, that's what I would have wanted to do. It's banned now in the state of
You could
Florida.
bet after the first turn, after
First jump, yeah.
everybody crashes into each other.
See the dogs left in a box. I'll never forget, a buddy of mine and I, very early in our television producing careers, I was in on the production a little bit, but my friend really did all of the technical work, as you might imagine. And we had our first shot. This was his first big time national directing opportunity, as we were working for a regional cable system, and they were producing for their national network the Greyhound Race of Champions in Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so
Place I have been.
Kenosha, Wisconsin. Yeah, and then the only thing there was the dog track. Otherwise, you
Mhm.
were fucked. So, so anyway, my buddy, a guy named Mike, and he was brilliant, and he mapped this thing out. He's on the plane. He's got page after page of production notes. He's got everything worked out just perfectly, timing. We get in the room, a little production meeting with the. They were kind of hicks, I guess. Well, how would you describe? I mean, you have Wisconsin ties, do you not, Professor, or Midwest ties? I mean, how would you describe the people there? They weren't country people. They were just
They're
like
like a mix. They were like, the cast of Fargo. Like,
exactly right. So we're in a room, and here's this guy, and he's coming on very strongly. I mean, all of a sudden, he was like, Bob Dunphy directing a boxing match, and he was like, "You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to break the dogs at exactly 7:32 58. They have to break from the box. I want that rabbit moving 20 seconds prior." So and he had scheduled a feature, a brilliant feature on every dog, very artistic. I mean, he made this dog race. It looked like the production on the Kentucky Derby. It was absolutely fantastic. So I'm standing out there by the box. It's a little bit cold outside, and I'm standing out there in a coat and tie, if you can imagine. Young DeForest. I'm just sort of making my way into the broadcasting world and getting some opportunities at that level. Which, how big of a level is it? Dog race, for God's sake, on Prime Network. And we're taking the directions, and the feature's playing, and he's only on the five dog. In the video, this is a pre-taped piece, and all of a sudden, I hear the rabbit moving, and I'm thinking, "This is great, man. We're doing a dog race. The only thing that matters in this race is the start, and we're going to miss the opening of the box." And we picked them up as they hit the turn. So, I mean, it couldn't be any worse. But now I would love to take advantage of that.
I mean, it's not a shame because really the sport should have been banned because, most of the people involved in the running of it treated the dogs just
Oh, it's
horribly.
horrendous.
So I'm not ashamed. I'm not sorry to see it go in that. By the way, the state of Wisconsin has also banned dog racing.
Okay.
Um, but I kind of feel bad for generations of future degenerates who will never get to see this because the fact that anybody ever put a dime on this is the most insane thing. Okay, because you've never seen dog racing, and most of you probably 75% of the races, three-quarters of the field gets wiped out at their first turn because they all
Yes.
get to the first turn at about the same time, and then they try to start the turn, and they run into it was like a NASCAR race.
It was
If
Danica Patrick in the third,
if
third row.
everybody crashed within the first mile of the race. And I used to like when I would go, I would have theories like I would want to bet on the heaviest dog
Yes.
because he would be the most likely to be able to withstand that gigantic
Or the
wipeout
dog that took a shit was
on
always
the
an
front gap.
indicator. Yes.
But yeah, well, I mean that's all racing sports, I think. But
That's in horse racing too. People
yeah,
thought
that's
that
all
the horse
racing
took a
sports.
shit, that it was
The
it
horse
was a
takes a
go.
dump if the
Yeah.
dog takes a dump. But yeah, I mean, what an insane.
It's like anything though, Professor, and you know this. I mean, you've gotten very good and honed in on some really obscure sports, especially during a pandemic. All of a
Yeah,
sudden, you're hitting Australian rules football and lighting it up as if you were betting
and
this
growing to
European
really
race.
enjoy the sport too. To this day, if I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll catch an Aussie rules.
Yeah. A guy in a white hat there, and they should have a guy in a white coat coming to take you away for betting this shit. But you became very astute at it. I remember you had a huge run during the pandemic on our handicapping shows that we were doing on the radio. But there were many people that were very astute at handicapping dogs.
Oh,
And
I look, I there were like I remember there was a guy who would go around and he had like a computer program that he was trying to sell for like $1,500 a shot. That supposedly gave you, I don't know, 60% of the quinellas or something stupid like that.
Highlight
Um,
would be the game that would have been tough to actually believe that somebody had a handle on it.
a highlight was all about the numbers. It wasn't the players. It was
Yes,
the order they were in because year after year, uh, 4-3-1, 4-3-2, 4-1-3, 4-2-3 were the top trifecta every year. There were certain combinations 1-2-3 with 4-5-6 with 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 5-6-7-8. You had to have the proper understanding of just the way the game operated meant that certain numbers were going to win more often than others.
yeah. You didn't need a program, and you needed a slide rule, and you didn't need to
Yeah,
know who the hell was in these different spots.
exactly.
But anyway, if you are betting in game, Bet Online's a place to do it. They have it all: NBA, college basketball, whatever you want to bet on, they can do it for you. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right, we
Okay,
have a
now
lot of ground to cover, Professor.
let's start with the NFL
Yeah.
because
Okay.
we're sitting here, we're talking about numbers and runouts and
Features,
highlight and
crazy shit. Yeah.
what dog was going to get to the first quarter. I think sometimes, particularly in the modern scope, with all these math guys who have taken over the industry, and I've got my algorithm and this and that, and the Gambletron 2000 runs 10,000 simulations, and this. I think we outsmart ourselves sometimes.
Absolutely.
And in this particular case, Kansas City and Buffalo, I'm going to disagree with you. I actually think there's some very easy angles. Angle number one, favorites have been covering all year long. Bookies crying in the streets because the chalk has feasted all year long.
Not as much in the postseason, though. I think
Not as again trying to outsmart ourselves.
right.
Stat number two, Patrick Mahomes has been favored by less than 3 points 6 times in the NFL playoffs. He is 6-0 in those situations. I don't understand how the public isn't just all over Kansas City here. And I know
It's
Buffalo beat them
strange.
in the regular season. Well, Buffalo's beat them in the regular season before. Like
Yes.
when it gets to this time of the year, we may dislike Kansas City. We all may want to buy into this ref conspiracy nonsense and pretend that Patrick Mahomes gets a bunch of calls other quarterbacks don't get, when in fact, Patrick Mahomes is something like 16th among active quarterbacks in flags per 100 snaps roughing the passer. You know who's number one? Josh Allen
Wow.
actually gets more calls than Patrick
Good
Mahomes.
stat.
But I think people are suffering from Kansas City Chiefs exhaustion and are looking for a reason to want to hope in Buffalo. And to me, the numbers and the trends say there ain't a lot of reason for hope, and that the side you should be on is the Kansas City Chiefs.
I lost $100 the other day in a dead or alive proposition bet that I was sitting with Jersey Kyle at a bar, and it popped up Marv Levy, dead or alive, and I went dead for a stick. 99 years old. I think his birthday might have been yesterday.
He's just hanging on forever.
Yeah, but people, believe there is some sentiment that those Buffalo teams of the 90s, I guess that was, were so good, and it was so unfair that they were victimized, at least in a couple of those Super Bowls, by just a horrendous and horrific fate, including the Scott Norwood missed field goal. Yeah,
That's
I
the
mean,
only
I
one that
think.
sticks out to me that was it was actually much of a game, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember all of the details of those four straight losses. Fran Tarkenton, what would be the other guy that lost four Super Bowls, but they weren't
I
consecutively.
seem to remember one year they were either tied or up like 3 on Dallas at halftime, and then they lost the second half like 28-0 or
Yeah.
something like that. But it
Oh,
strikes me that of all those Super Bowls, the only one that was actually a competitive game was the first one, was Buffalo and the Giants.
was that the one where Steve Tasker, even though they were hopelessly down, ran like 99 yards to swat the ball away from a guy at
From
the
Leon
half
Lett.
yard line that was on a kickoff return about to score?
From Leon Lett.
Yes, many lame efforts that have been made by the Buffalo Bills in the past, but they've been knocking on the door. I wouldn't mind seeing a little change of the guard. How do you feel? I mean, I'm surprised too that the line it's hovered between 1 and a hook and 2 in
Yes.
favor of Kansas City, and they're home. So essentially, the odds makers who usually accord 3 points for the home field, that was a standard at one time. I'm not sure it's still applicable, but in this case, you think it would be. So they're essentially saying that from the standpoint of taking away the 3 and knocking it down to 1 and a hook, that they're making Buffalo, giving them a slight edge in
They're
this.
saying Buffalo would be a slight favorite on a neutral field. I'm not sure I agree with that, particularly in the postseason. But, again, the line has not really fluctuated that much, as you said, sort of bouncing between 1.5 and 2. So, in terms of determining the actual use of the number, which is taking equal action, it looks like they've done a pretty good job with this particular number. I don't happen to agree with this number. Again, I think at less than 3, Kansas City's a no-brainer. But again, I think America is definitely suffering from Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift fatigue.
Yeah. I've been shoveled down our throat for a long time. I mean, I've seen Mahomes. It seems like in big spots, he does get, whether he's getting the same number of flags as Josh Allen per 100 possessions or snaps.
Less.
Um,
He gets less flag. Again,
a
this is
tiny aspect of it that
this is
really
the expression of the fatigue to me, is the fact that people are locked into this ref conspiracy
yes.
stuff. And Mahomes didn't help himself with that flop in the red zone that looked like something a Dutch soccer player would do, where
Well,
he
when the two guys collide like the Three Stooges, as they were trying to hammer a guy and they miss him completely, and he gets the flag in his favor on that. That was ugly. All right, so how do you feel about? You think you would go ahead and lay the points with Kansas City?
I would.
Okay, and then how do you feel about teasers? Because I'm looking at.
How
I'm
I
on the
feel
wrong
about
side, I think, of both games, and yet from a rooting standpoint, I think I'm going to go ahead and put my money with my heart instead of my head there, and just this way, I'll have added incentive to root home the Commanders over the Eagles and the Buffalo Bills over the Chiefs. But would you go ahead and take the 7-point teaser prop? Does
no.
that ever appeal to you?
No, I would. Again, forgetting that it cuts down your price and destroys your odds. I'm not entirely confident the Commanders don't get completely smoked in this game.
Could happen.
And
Yes.
people are going to say, "Well, Ken, what about a month ago when they beat Philly?" I would like to remind you that game was 21-7 and on its way to a complete beatdown, and then Jalen Hurts got a concussion, and that
Yeah.
was easily the determining factor in this game. Look at this game. Uh, Philly, number 2 in the NFL in rushing offense, and honestly have looked even better rushing in the postseason. Their offensive line has been completely dominant, and Washington's in the bottom third in rush defense. Washington does defend the pass very well, but Philly doesn't throw the ball that much. I mean, like cold weather, uh, all the factors to me indicate that, again, not. I don't love the game with the number, but if anybody's getting smoked this weekend, it's the Washington Commanders. So,
That
and
was likely. Yes.
if I'll be honest, I don't really necessarily uh, understand what has fueled this offensive run. By the way, and I've watched a lot of them. They don't run the ball particularly well. Yes, they have McLaurin, who's very dangerous as a wide receiver, but the rest of their wide receiver core is kind of eh. I mean, they have Ertz, who's a nice pass catching tight end, but their overall weapons aren't great. Their offensive line is not great. Daniels is obviously a very gifted scrambler, but you look at the Washington. About to say their previous name. You look at the Washington Commanders, and it would appear that they've had some good fortune over the last month too, and we have seen that reverse when we get to this stage of the playoffs very well. I personally think pretty much the balance of the season, Philly in the NFC, KC in the AFC, have been the two dominant teams, and I personally think that's going to be the Super Bowl. Again, probably to people's exhaustion to some degree or another, because people are tired of the Kansas City Chiefs and probably don't want to see a repeat of a Super Bowl we saw a couple of years ago.
Rematch. I'll never forget. I was in Atlantic City there. They had a big Super Bowl party. Invited some of their players, which Mustang happened to qualify for this. A little freebie trip up there. And, of course, Philadelphia stronghold. And at halftime, I mean, they're dancing in the streets. And I remember thinking, my God, they were already online to collect their tickets. It looked like it was going to be a blowout. And then Kansas City, in improbable fashion, came back and won that ball game. And there were a lot of tickets torn and scattered about the floor like confetti. which the people were definitely like they got poked with a hot stick in the eye after that result came about. It would be interesting to see the matchup, and it's probably the likelihood that will happen. All right, our friend, and we talked about this a little bit on another show this morning, Professor. You also are a believer in ride the wave. We were talking yesterday with Mike Jones, and he says, and this is not based on any numerology, that they can't make a line big enough to make up for the fact that the University of Miami basketball team is getting blown out by I mean, just gargantuan numbers in every game of late. They were lousy before this. Since Jim Larinaga left, they're even worse. And he was saying it didn't matter what the line was that they would make against the University of Miami on Saturday against Cal. He was going to go ahead and unload on Cal.
I mean, they can make a line big enough. They probably won't against Cal because Cal's not particularly good themselves. But by the time we get to the end of the season, you'll probably, I mean, look, if you're trying to forecast for example, the Miami and Duke line uh, down the line a little bit, I don't know where you'd put that, but it'd probably be well into the 20s. So, yeah, they can make a line big enough. Just at the moment, they're not doing so. So go ahead and take advantage. And I'm with your friend, Cal probably be somewhere in the 11-12 range and go ahead and unload the way Miami's going because, you know, why ignore it?
Yep, always good to ride a wave, and you might bet against all Miami teams now, as the Heat also went into the tank last night. And that was an example of in-game betting. They're up like 18-3 over Milwaukee. Milwaukee is laying 6 points, and that's the time to pounce. Well, when you know that the eventuality and the likelihood is
Particularly in the NBA, right?
yes,
The
that's
NBA where 20-point leads go to die.
insane how often it happens. And with a team now that seems to have lost a little bit, that culture is starting to look like that yogurt that you opened up that not only had an expiration date that has been exceeded, but also had its statute of limitations gone, and something that no scientist would even take the lid off. And
Yeah, the
it's
Heat are going
starting
to
to get
have
a
to
little
answer
moldy.
some questions about that over the next couple of years, including, the has it gone stale with Coach Eric Spoelstra? As great as he's been the last couple of years, the formula really doesn't seem to be working anymore. And is it time for a change there?
Yeah. Yeah, the culture. I don't even think Louis Pasteur would touch Heat culture right now, the way that it's going with Jimmy Butler. All right, let's get a couple of college basketball picks in, and then we'll get into what has become a very popular segment on the show, the big board. And I think you have a sensational one for us this week.
Okay, couple picks tonight. Start at 7 o'clock, I believe it is. Hold on one second. Yeah, 7 o'clock. Villanova going to Marquette. Marquette laying 9.5. I actually just saw it click to 10 a second ago. Um, but Villanova, a very good shooting team who likes to play a very slow pace. These are two things Marquette does not like. Marquette does not play very good defense, although they're one of the most dynamic offensive teams in the country. And they want to play games in the 80s. They want to play very, very fast. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to get Villanova to speed up. We saw that a couple weeks ago, about 10 days ago, against UConn, where Villanova managed to pull up the upset at home. I'm not calling them to win straight up, but I think getting 9.5, 10 points in this situation, Villanova looks like a very good spot here. They shoot the ball very well, somewhere around 40th in the country in field goal percentage. And they play the kind of pace Marquette does not like. Marquette, when they want to cover, they want to score high. They're not likely to get Villanova into a run and gun type of game unless they come out and shoot the eyes out of the ball at the start of this game. I don't see that happening. So I like Villanova plus the 9.5 at 7 o'clock, and then take it to the West Coast game, which is, I believe, it's an 8 o'clock. No, excuse me. I'm trying to find it because the game is in Washington. Where is this on my schedule? Sorry about this. It's an 11 o'clock stick. Like, I love those 11 o'clock Saturday starts. And the number is now down to 4.5 from 5. UCLA laying 4.5 on the road in the Washington. UCLA, to me, looked like they might go in a swoon a couple of weeks ago, but have rallied the last couple games with wins over Iowa. A pretty good Iowa team, actually. And Wisconsin the other night. Going to a Washington team who is just coming off the rails. I believe they've lost 6 in a row, haven't won since February 2nd, and have gotten smoked a few times. I like UCLA to go in, and this, by the way, we always talk about college basketball season. If you look at the Ken Palm rankings. These teams are a little deceptive on their record. UCLA, I believe, is 28th in Ken Pom. They're currently unranked. Washington, a bad 93rd in the Ken Pomeroy rankings. Short story on this one: Washington, I think, ranks 116th in the country in offense. UCLA 19th in the country in defense. Does not look like a good situation for the Huskies, who already have offensive trouble, having to play one of the best defensive teams in the country in the Bruins. UCLA currently showing 4.5 would be our play there tonight
All right.
against the Washington Huskies.
Very good. All right. The highlight of the show the last few weeks, and it's great you've been able to replicate this on this program in this format, because it's a standout piece on one of our long-running shows that we do on a variety of different platforms. So here we go. And interesting, always timely. The professor, there's a sports tie into everything, and there was a sports tie, of course, into the Trump inauguration.
Yep, and that is what we're talking about this week, which is the big bird of the world of sports at the Trump inauguration. And that takes us to number 5, which I confess is a kind of shaky tie-in
Yeah.
to this world of sports, but was my favorite picture, which is number 5, Mark Zuckerberg. Spent the inauguration checking out Tony Gonzalez's baby's mama and her assets there, which, I can't blame him. As we said on another show, much more interesting than most of the speeches.
He is giving that a serious look. Now, where was Bezos on this? And especially the guy that's in the middle of this picture here, who happened to be in the row behind Zuckerberg and Lawrence Sanchez. He's more enamored with her rather well-endowed chest than even Zuckerberg, who's got, I mean, literally a pedophile type of look on his face, does he not?
I mean, I wouldn't use that particular term because she's clearly an adult. But I don't know how Bezos is putting up with this. As we've said, Jeff Bezos, who's slowly turning himself into the rapper Pitbull. And I got to say, I feel like if someone was checking out Pitbull's girl like this, he'd have to throw some hands. But, Bezos let Zuckerberg get away with it.
All right, and one of the highlights, it's number 5, the tie-in, the sports world at the Trump inauguration. Number 4.
Number 4 is Wayne Gretzky will do anything to get out of the house. Like, we all know this guy who we can always call up. Do you want to go out? Do you want to do this? And it doesn't really matter where you're going and what you're doing. He will go along just to get away from his wife. That is Wayne Gretzky at this point in his life. Like, Wayne Gretzky will just go to any event as long as he can get out of the house and not have to listen to Janet Jones, particularly since, all the gambling apps came along. And I don't blame him. Like, can you imagine having to sit next to Janet Jones through an NFL playoff game right now? When you're Wayne Gretzky, you almost went to jail over all this, and she's sitting there going, you know what? I'm going to bet a 6-leg single game parlay with 4 touchdown scorers and 2 guys to go over in the yards. Yeah, I don't blame Wayne Gretzky for this.
No, I mean, some of his bonus money from the playoffs with the Kings, I think, went up in smoke when she had the wrong side of the heads or tails.
Right.
In the Super Bowl, and she was betting that with the Jersey Turnpike cops.
Like, if you live in the same town as Wayne Gretzky, you totally expect Wayne Gretzky to be at like an Applebee's on a Saturday night. Like, you're Wayne Gretzky. What the fuck are you doing? He's like, I had to get out of the house, man. Like, I can't take her anymore.
Yeah, and Paulina Gretzky, of course, a big
also
sports
awful.
Well,
yeah,
with Dustin Johnson, and she's got to be driving him crazy too.
Yeah, Dad, will you hold my phone where I record my 700th TikTok of the day? Yeah, like, just goes to show you, doesn't know, no matter how famous you are, how rich you are, how successful you are in the field, there's a reasonable chance you'll end up despising your family. Look
Number
at
3.
Brett Favre. Brett Favre was willing to go back and get hit by defensive tackles rather than put up with his wife and children anymore. And Wayne Gretzky is now definitely in that zone.
That's number 4. Number 3.
Number 3 is, number 3 is Mavericks owner Miriam Adelson, who showed up after robbing Jimi Hendrix's coffin for his suit. Like, again, I know Melania Trump has made it fashionable to dress up like cartoon characters now. But are you going to get sued by John Lennon's estate for stealing his Sgt. Pepper's outfit?
That's the owner of the Mavericks. Yeah,
right?
pretty incredible.
I mean, look, I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but let's have a little decorum and dignity in our outfits. Dress your age. Like do you still think it's 1969? Are you waiting for the age of Aquarius to rear your eyes? What the hell is going on there with that outfit? And you're a billionaire. So someone you probably paid someone to advise you on that outfit.
Yeah, interesting too, because her husband, of course, who she inherited tons of cash from, a Vegas savant, casino owner, was one of the guys responsible, having seen Trump's track record in Atlantic City for making sure that they, put their foot down when it came to him being part of the Vegas casino scene.
I didn't give him a casino license,
Yeah.
which again, it's an interesting combination. Sheldon Adelson, one of the most famous casino magnates in Las Vegas, didn't think Donald Trump was responsible enough to have a Las Vegas casino license, but then became his biggest donor for the president of the United States. And then he killed over dead. So, maybe not making the best decisions at the end of his life.
Number 2 on the list.
Number 2, Oilers wing Evander Kane, a black Canadian, went to the Trump inauguration. Why? Did you get lost? How the hell did you get an invite to this thing? Like, who in the Trump administration was like, "Oh, let's invite that black guy from the Edmonton Oilers"? And honestly, if you're any other hockey player, if you're I don't know, a Kachuk on the Panthers, aren't you pissed off that you didn't get an invite? Evander Kane gets invited for something. Is it every other hockey player in America? Like, what the fuck, man?
And we all know the stories, and with some validation about the position of hockey players when it comes to DEI type of issues.
Yes, but I mean, again, you're a black Canadian. What are you doing here? Like, did you just see a party and wander in? Like, how the hell did this happen?
All right, that's number 2. Number 1 has to be a beauty.
Number 1, all the worst people on earth in one picture. The Paul brothers and Conor McGregor not only went to the Trump inauguration, but went together on one party bus. Like, ISIS attacks the Super Bowl, but you can't drive a truck through this party bus and alleviate all of it. This goes beyond politics, because I don't really believe there's a bunch of Trump fans out there who love the Paul brothers and Conor McGregor. I have to feel like this is a unified. Like, if you polled this nationally, I feel like 96% of America would come out around and be like, "Oh yeah, those three suck." Like, who likes these people? Like, if we just had one terrorist strike, wouldn't it take care of, everybody's misery for the next 20 years, particularly if you're a boxing or MMA fan?
Yeah, if you're a boxing fan, you only tune in to see Jake Paul get knocked out.
Exactly.
Anyway,
Yeah, we talked about this on a different show, but people watch Jake Paul fights to see Jake Paul die in the ring. Like, that's
to see him die.
like, if Jake Paul fought a grizzly bear,
Yeah.
4 billion people would tune in to see the grizzly bear kill him. Like, that's it. We're not watching Jake Paul fights because we're enamored with Jake Paul's, boxing skills. We're watching Jake Paul fights to see Jake Paul get beaten to death. And so far, we haven't gotten that. It's a very successful formula commercially, because people keep tuning in for it.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But if he fought like a wild, dangerous animal, everybody would watch it, because everybody wants to see Jake Paul get killed.
Yeah, after the Jimmy Carter fight fell through due to passing after 3 years in hospice, and they'd been negotiating for a long time. It was just hard to get Jimmy to sign.
I mean, honestly, do we know a fight promoter? Because I think we have a winning idea. Like, Jake Paul versus a grizzly bear. Like, and I think he's stupid enough that you could talk him into it. And, again, it would break Netflix. It would break the entire. You could put it on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and everything else at the same time, and the entire world would tune in to see Jake Paul die in the ring against the grizzly bear.
With all due respect to Roy of Siegfried and Roy fame, that would be something I think
exactly.
gladly ante up whatever amount of money it was.
You just hit the perfect
Wins.
example because, like, did anybody when that happened feel bad for Roy? No, everybody was like, no, he's been asking that for the Tiger for like 30 years. Like,
Well, and they also suspected that Siegfried was behind it.
I
So.
did not know that, but makes perfect sense.
All right, good stuff. Always a tie-in with sports, and specifically,
There
and very much in evidence at the Trump inauguration.
all hockey and boxing.
Yes, odd connections there. Yeah, I
It
mean,
really is.
maybe it's a sign.
Not a lot of NBA players represented at
No, you didn't see LeBron out there.
NBA owners, not so much the players.
No, except for the Adelson thing, of course, what was exceptional, and who dressed her? It's always like the guy that puts the bad hairpiece on.
Again, because of Melania and her penchant for dressing up like movie characters and cartoon characters, women's fashion is going to get really interesting the next 4 years. You're going to see some woman dressed up like Bugs Bunny when he went and dragged at a big presidential speech.
All right, excellent work as always, Professor. We thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week. The Professor, ladies and gentlemen.
You guys have a great one.
All right. All right, we have to run. I went in a little OT here on the program, so we're going to check out. Thanks to the Professor. Got some college basketball picks there. Bet against the University of Miami. I'm going to stick with Mike Jones on that trend, no matter what the line is for the Cal game. Lay any number of points because they look like they're totally in the tank, and that may apply to the Miami Heat too. As we've said, Heat culture has been badly spoiled. What with this whole Jimmy Butler versus Pat Riley ugliness, and Riley rarely loses a stare down. Well, we talked about it yesterday, too. I mean, it's impossible to get rid of a stiff if you're a team in the NBA. The complications are far more advanced and significant than they would be if you were just trying to dodge somebody that was constantly borrowing money off you. For the people at Bet Online, Greenlight Ventures, and NoFilter.net, I'm Jeff DeForest. Good luck, everybody. We'll be back on Monday, and we'll lick our wounds and or celebrate our victories on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.